Welcome to Breaking Through the Contradictions. Here we openly discuss various contradictions and challenges that we pass on and also teach our children that, if not addressed, will impact the individual development of each child. We will explore the topic, share pertinent information, and provide ways for you and I to take action. We look forward to you joining our conversation. So let's get started. The views and opinions expressed by the guests, speakers, and participants in this context are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the organizers, hosts, or any affiliated individuals or organizations. We encourage open dialogue and diverse perspectives, but the individual viewpoints shared during this discussion are personal and should not be attributed to any collective entity involved. Hello.
Hello.
I'm
Hi.
excited. It's Thursday. Yay. Hello, ladies. How are you today?
Good. How are you doing, Tabitha? Hi, Christina.
Doing well. Thank you. Tab, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm doing all right. Today's Thursday. We have a great we're going to have a great conversation. And I've met some pretty awesome people here in the last few days, and man, I'm excited.
Us too.
Okay.
All right, so we invited somebody new because we know that some given point in time we are going to start inviting other people on because they all have all of us are living with contradictions one way or another, whether we have children or we don't. And we all have that thing where we have that internal conflict that happens because we're just unsure. We're always kind of on the fence, what to talk about, what not to talk about, type of a thing. So I'm glad that I have Christina here because she joined me over there on Save Our Kids. And so when we were talking, we were having discussions a little bit about some of the other things that can, what other contradictions are out there. Mm-hmm. You brought up one that I thought was really important, which is we need to talk about mental health with our middle schoolers, but we can't talk about that, right? There's always these key words that people say we should not talk about. Don't do it, because if you say it, then they'll have an option. Okay, the option already exists. Or if we say it, that means somebody else will want to go and do it. They're already thinking about it. So we're not the ones that are putting the thoughts in the minds of those people, and those young people. We're just saying that let's talk about it, because nothing gets solved in dark places. It only gets solved when we start having conversations about it. So today we're going to talk about mental health, and I'm going to give Miss Christina the floor for a minute so she can kind of give us the lay of the land so that we understand what we're talking about and why we're here. Before I give it to you, though, this is one thing I will say. This conversation may be a little challenging for some. If you are experiencing mental health challenges, make sure to dial or text 988 for support and help. So I'm going to let that roll across the bottom as we go ahead and listen to Miss Christina. And I'm going to get these names right today, man.
Yeah, it's going to be confusing with Christina and Christina, but my name is Christina with an A. The A is very important to me. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in New York State. I have a group practice called Expressive Connections Mental Health Counseling. And what I feel like is really important for us to talk about today is how, and I want to start by saying, I think it's so wonderful that so many schools now are taking very seriously mental health education in the schools. And there's always room for improvement with these things. And so where I'm coming from is from a place of how can we continue to benefit our kids and how can we continue to benefit society? And I think that such a big part of that is there is still so much shame around talking about different mental health topics. There are schools where when we go in to educate around mental health, we can't use the word suicide when talking about suicide prevention. I mean, think about it. We can't use the word that we're trying to give people resources for and give them and education and understanding about. And so when we're doing that, we're sending a contradictory message. We're saying, hey, this isn't an option or doesn't have to be an option, but we're also putting so much shame around it. So how can we expect kids to talk honestly or come forward honestly and transparently about what they're experiencing without really giving them effective language to be able to do so, and shameless language to be able to do so? Even talking about things like depression and anxiety and things that might lead to suicidal ideation or might have nothing to do with, and no one's feeling, any sort of suicidal ideation, but without giving people a truly and purely shame-free space, they're not really going to be able to develop a language that really for them to really understand what they're feeling and what's going on for them. And more of what I'm seeing is people having language and saying, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling anxious, I feel suicidal, this person's gaslighting me, this is abuse, people are saying all of these words. And then when you actually ask them, well, what does that word mean? What does it mean to you? And then they tell you, they're not actually defining the words the way that they're meant to be defined and used. They're coming up with their own assumptions. So if we're not giving kids the right information at the right point in their development, we're setting them up to make these assumptions, talk to their peers about these things, and their peers know just as much as they do.
Nothing. There's nothing.
Right.
So, yeah. So, I mean, and so now I'm glad that you were able to do that. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. So we now have a place to jump off from. Oh, okay. I don't know what's happening here. Oh, I left it for the comments. All right. So I would like to say that I think in a lot of cases, why is it that everybody's so there's so much shame associated with mental health? First of all, we did have Kevin here a few months ago who said that he said that it's not a mental health crisis; it's actually an emotional connection. But I think for him, he wanted to focus primarily there. But we as humans, we have 360 degrees of us, right? So we have 300. So we have 359 other ways that we can view the same situation. So his situation was heavily on emotional side of things, and then maybe the other situation may not have been so much, right? But the point is it's more than one. But we have to get to the place where we're stop shaming, making these kids feel bad about their feelings. So how do we do that? And why is it? I mean, what is the problem, people, parents? What is the issue? Wouldn't you rather know to your child? I'm looking for my color wheel. I have a color wheel. You know the color wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know the color wheel.
Oh, you don't. Okay, so here it is. I found it. My color wheel. I got a color wheel from someone, and they said, and in the color wheel, it has the different feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what I've started to learn to do, which is to find the feeling in the center, find the biggest one, and then kind of go out. And it kind of it's like 3 layers. And so for this one, this subject kind of makes me sad, kind of just feeling hurt, which would ultimately result in embarrassment or disappointment. When we kind of create that way for them to express their feelings, now you kind of understand where you have to come from in order to help them where they are.
Right.
So that's one thing that I have been incorporating in my day when I use my feelings, just trying to support other people. So what do you think about that? And what is your feelings about this subject in general, Christine?
The color wheel. So I use a kindergarten version of that. There's 4 colors because it's for kindergarten. And so we do the happy, sad, angry, and then like silly. So then that way they can pinpoint their feelings, and based off of their feelings that we give them strategies. So that's very similar to what you're talking about. So that's helpful because then we have a discussion, which at the kindergarten level. So we were talking about middle schoolers, but it does start earlier, because you said talking about things that are developmentally appropriate at that time is important. So at this stage, it's important for the children to be able to start to identify their feelings and being able to expressively say what they're feeling and then ask for what they need. So my students in my classroom, for instance, I had a student telling me that they needed to calm down, so they were able to use their self-regulatory skills. I'm going to tell you that wasn't always the case. They asked for a book, and so they could do some writing, because that was what they needed to recenter themselves. Fine. So they did academics. Was it what I was doing at the time? No, but it was helping them to self-regulate. Or sometimes they need hugs, but they're asking for what they need. And so I think it starts when they're very young. I'm also going to piggyback off of what Christina said too, that the suicide rates are very high. So I looked up, and there was some information from Navigate 360, which Tabitha also said that a person has 360 degrees, and there is a significant increase in alarms for self-harm and harming others. And if we are not talking about this, like Christina said, we are going to keep on upticking. So across more than 33 million online schools and social media alerts, the data shows alerts related to self-harm are up 51 year over year, compared to 25% increase year over year in alerts related to weapons and harm to others. So that is a large number, and it's not going away. So if we're not discussing it, those numbers are going to continue to climb. Additionally, more than 44,000 anonymous tips per week are coming into school tip lines, with the most common tips related to self-harm. So we have to do better for our children. And in middle school is where we start to see a lot of the hormonal changes, and that also upticks the suicidal ideologies as well during that time period.
To piggyback off of what you were just saying, Christine, the education has to start in elementary school. And that's not to say that we're, educating 5-year-olds the same way that we're even educating 10-year-olds versus 14-year-olds.
Right.
But the kids' emotional intelligence, or their EQ, is incredibly high. And if you take the same child and you test their EQ at 5 years old, test them again at 10 years old, 15, and so on, and do that in 5-minute increments over the course of the first 20 to 30 years of their life, you'll notice that their EQ exponentially drops. We're not fostering emotional intelligence in kids when we really need to be. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the biggest challenges is that the older that we get and the less we educate ourselves and children on this matter, the more disconnected we become from ourselves and from our emotional experiences. And then we don't even have the ability to say, I'm feeling happy, sad, or, I know several people in the work that I've done who can't tell the difference between feeling anxious and hungry. Yeah. Like, that's how disconnected and emotionally dysregulated we are as a society. People are having trouble telling the difference between I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm anxious, I'm dissociating. We're not as connected to ourselves as we could be. And starting having these conversations younger, and again, coming back to a shame narrative, where let's even look at the term learning disability for a moment. I don't like that term at all. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I don't like the term learning disability, because I have never met a single human being in my entire life who is incapable of learning. What I have met are people with different learning abilities and different learning styles. And when you have a person in the education system or saying to a parent or saying to a teacher, why can't he, she, or they just get it? Why can't they just do that? Well, maybe they're not visual learners. Maybe they have a processing disorder that makes their brain flip letters and numbers like dyslexia. But there are also multiple kinds of dyslexia. There's auditory forms of dyslexia where people confuse words or they can't interpret sounds if they sound different from what they're used to. And so if you have somebody who's trying to read with dyslexia, are you going to well, no, you're learning disabled. You just simply can't learn this information and now you're doomed? No. You give them something to listen to. You give them a different way to experience and absorb the information. So if we're looking at just that word, learning disability or emotional disability, or it's not a disability, it's a different ability. And that, I think, is one of the first things we really need to get right with as the grown-ups in these children's lives, that we can't look at people with ADHD or anxiety or learning disabilities as if they can't do something. We have to look at them as if they need different supports than what those 5 other children need in order to learn and process the information, no matter what the information is.
So
I 100% agree.
I am actually writing a book. It's in the editing process, the hopefully final editing process. So it's been edited a lot, but it's called Creating Harmony in Classroom. It's talking about building for inclusion first. So all children can learn. Children learn differently. So we need to make sure that our programs are having individual learning. So each child, we don't fit them all into one lump sum. Each child learns things differently. I honestly think that if we teach our children to work with the way that they learn, we could teach them how to learn the way that they learn best, and then they won't need the supports if we scaffold it properly for them. So my son had a learning disability, and I told him, listen, you can work through this. You can master it. What you got to do is you got to figure out how you learn the best. Is it like repeating? Maybe you don't get it right away because he had a auditory processing disorder. So he wouldn't take in all of the information. Plus he had ADHD. So his brain did not work as fast. So he couldn't get it into his short-term memory, then to get it into his long-term memory. So we had to do a lot of repetitions. And his writing, you couldn't even recognize it. Well, he just kept on, showed him how his brain was working, and we kept on expanding it and expanding it and expanding it. By 5th grade, he was doing much better, and that was success. So we have to make sure that we are telling the students they can learn, because as soon as we put it into our brains that child cannot learn, and we've already set that student up for failure.
Right. Because now we're not teaching them because we've
Correct.
already decided that they can't learn.
Correct.
But imagine how different everybody's life would be if when we were 5 years old, we assessed for learning style first. I do not have a learning disability or processing or anything like that, but I am the kind of person who, if you give me a book to read, I'm rereading the same paragraph multiple times just because just the comprehension, something doesn't always click for me. But I'm also that person who you tell me to go watch a movie, and then after I've watched it once, I can recite pretty much the whole damn thing for you. So it's different styles of learning, and showing kids or teaching kids. One of the things that we say in my practice all the time is we're here to help you work with your brain, not against it. Work with your body and not against it. Your body and your brain send you messages on what's going on for you, and we're here to help you figure out what that is so that you can be the most connected version of yourself and then go into the world and do what you need to do. And if we, at a young age, we're teaching people what their best, most effective learning abilities and styles are, it would resolve so many issues when it comes to academics. It would resolve so many challenges when it comes to self-awareness and understanding their own mental, emotional, spiritual well-beings. it would change so much. I think that is one of the biggest things that we as a society need to address, is how we approach kids in the way that they learn and how we teach them to learn.
Yeah, so this is really good. I like this conversation because you're actually feeding into next week's conversation, because this is about the disabilities. Because I keep running into different people with these, what is considered, is labeled with a disability of sorts. And in education, they blanket them and then say they can't learn, regardless of the disability, whether it's a wheelchair, crutches, whatever title, they for whatever reason. And that's an adult thing. That's not a child thing. That's an adult thing. You show up with your biases and spray them all over the kids, and then expect them to say, I'm motivated enough to move through this sludge. And that is really, really bad. I'm going to say this very clearly. Children are resilient. Absolutely, hands down. They bounce. There's a reason why. Okay. But that does not give any adult the right or the opportunity, using that as an opportunity to test their resilience. That's not fair. And that is wrong.
Absolutely.
So that's the problem I feel like most people are having in these situations, is that they say, oh, well, they'll get over it. And, oh, it's just temporary. Depression can last for a long period of time. And so I know, Christina, you are, as a therapist, I don't know how you teach this or whatever. It's, your feelings are like waves. They go in with the tide and they go out with the tide. So just sit and just kind of allow the feelings to roll over you, kind of a thing, and just roll back out. That does not work for all humans. It doesn't work for me.
It's true. And one of the things, I will never forget this. My first experience being educated on mental health, I was in middle school, and somebody came and taught us what depression was and what anxiety was. And the only thing that I remember feeling after that lesson was terrified. I was terrified of the depression monster and the way that it was spoken to us. It was spoken to us in a way that, for me at least, maybe not everybody felt this way, but felt really scary, as if it's this dooming gloom that you can't do anything about. Because what happened when they were teaching us was they taught us what it was, and that was it. They taught us that this is something that might happen to you, as opposed to something that lots of people experience. And if you notice these signs in yourself, you're going to be okay, because these are the things that you can do. These are the people you can talk to. These are the resources that you have at 11, 12, 13 years old. You are not alone in this. And so that's the first thing. I'm sure, it's been a while since I've been in middle school. So I'm confident that things have changed since I first received that piece of information. But even still, when a child comes to their guidance counselor, to their teacher, to their parent, and says, I learned about something called depression today, and they said that what depression looks like is increased fatigue, feelings of hopelessness and sadness for long periods of time, not enjoying things that I used to enjoy. And I noticed that I think that I'm experiencing some of these things. How can we as the adults go to them and say, you know what? It's going to be okay. And I hear you and I support you. What we can do is we can call a therapist in our area or in our community, and you can talk to them and they can help you sort out what's going on for you. I had somebody come to me and say, I have an eating disorder. I said, oh, okay. Well, since you've already diagnosed yourself, let's process it. Let's actually talk about what's going on here. And they did not have an eating disorder. They had an anxiety disorder that was causing a disruption in their appetite. And so this is what I mean when I say we're giving people language, but we're not giving them true blue definitions and really helping them understand what all of this looks like. And then we're not following up with the appropriate resources. And there are people there are schools and parents who are on it. And I love that. And then there are people who simply don't even know what kinds of questions to ask. Before we jumped on this, became live, one of the things we were talking about is understanding messages that our body is sending us that could be mental health related, but could also be physical health related. And unless I'm wrong, the three of us are not doctors. But I've had people come to me with certain symptoms that could be mental health related. But then I always encourage everybody that comes to me, go get a physical. You haven't had a physical yet? Go. I don't want to talk to you again until you have it. And when they come back, I get told, did you know that I had a vitamin B12 deficiency? And that was what was causing me to have all of these symptoms that were mimicking a panic attack. And now that I am taking vitamin B12 or I'm, doing what the doctor recommended, I'm not experiencing these symptoms anymore. What do you know?
Yes. So I'm glad you said this. So there's a couple of things that I want to make sure I say. Is one, you're absolutely correct. I just had someone tell me that, actually, I just had a few people tell me they went to the dentist to have a tooth extracted or had dental work. The next thing you know, they're on their deathbed in about a week's time. Right? Guess what? It wasn't dental. It was an infection in the bone that was actually triggered by the removal of a tooth. Oh. So if we think about that, the dentist is how you found it, but your PCP or the ER was how they diagnosed it. Right. And so sometimes everything that in our body is connected. So one thing is connected to another, disconnected to another. So if your physical health is not 95 or 90%, then your mental health will follow. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we have to start to think about in those terms. But that being said, I have told my children, and I've told anybody I've come in contact with, you have a PhD in your own body. You have lived here your entire life. You know how it moves and what it likes and what it doesn't like. And then the doctor has a PhD in a book, and all of those case studies and examples that they were taught in order to learn their craft. Together, you're supposed to come together to have a conversation and say, this is how I'm feeling. This is what is going on. I don't like this feeling, or whatever that's going to be. And together, you are supposed to figure out the problem. If in the event you as a parent or as a young adult or as a person in general, if the person you are wishing to partner with to solve your whatever problem is not listening, move around, go find a new one. There's too many of them out there, and it is called a practice for a reason. And they're practicing on you with your permission and your copay. Hey. So I'm good with that, but I'm gonna need people to start being proactive in your stuff. Don't sit there and think that everybody else is going to come to your aid and solve your problems. If they're not listening, thank you very much. It was a pleasure meeting you. I'm so glad I did that. Move to the side so I can welcome someone else in, because that is what's happening. I believe that in school. I believe that in doctors, dentists, and any other field where you have to partner with somebody else for a solution that both of you can agree to, right? And this is another example. I'll go back to the one thing. The worst things you can say to someone in a depressive episode, I hate the stuff that people say. Just snap out of it. That is rude and so demeaning to the person, especially a child. They are happy all the time, but there are times in which some of these kiddos are sad because you're sad. You're a mom and you're crying because somebody just died, or you're getting a divorce, or you just got in an argument with your husband, and that impacts your children. So don't just tell somebody to snap out of it. That's rude, and it causes more harm. The other thing, but you have so much to be happy about. Who are you to say? I've lived here my entire life. And so sometimes my situation and my experience and my perspective, only one degree of my perspective, not the 359 degrees that everyone else is seeing. My perspective is right now, my life doesn't feel so great. In a child, it will fleet. It's ebbs and flows very often because they're trying to learn where they're supposed to land in that groove. It's up to us to, with our bumpers, make sure they don't hit the gutter, and we help them along the path. But we don't want to make the situation worse by the things that we say and the contradictions that we say. You have so much We all have bad days. Yes, but do your bad days feel like I want to go underneath the bed, or is it okay if I lay on top of the bed? People have to really be mindful of the words that they use, because that's that. But so you say all of us have bad days, right? Cool. When's the last time you had a bad day? Oh, that was a year ago. Wait a second. Well, I'm having them every month. That can be your cycle as a girl, right? In every quarter or every winter, right? Winter,
Mhm.
it's seasonal. So we have to be very mindful and just know that if we as adults struggle with depression, anxiety, or any of these things that we are talking about, your children who are individuals of their own can suffer the same way and the same things. And it's not okay. If you don't like how people are doing it to you, please don't do that to those children, because the
Mhm.
suicide rate has moved. They said since 2007, from 2007 through 2021, the suicide rate among young people has rose 62%. 62%. And that comes from not being able to successfully communicate with the people who care the most, who should care the most, and not having a place to go. So that's why I keep running the banner across the bottom. If you need to talk to somebody, dial 988. Your family does not have to be the only one. Your school does not have to be the only one that gives you help. Find a teacher in the school, because ladies, it's now time to give solutions. Find a teacher in the school that you like. If you get along with them and they're good, they have to report if the things are bad. But the bottom line is that if you're having a hard time, you need to talk to somebody, because we need you here, period. I need you here because I know you have greatness in you. I need you here because I want to see you live a very good life and I want to see you thrive. I may not know you personally, but I am fighting for each and every 0 through 25. I'm fighting for you every day, and I'm fighting my own demons to do it. So I want you to be present and here, but the only way to do that is you have to get help. Your counselors can help you. Find a friend, a family friend that is safe, and go and talk to them about that. But ultimately, if you can't reach anybody, just pick up the phone and dial 988, and somebody on the opposite side will be able to help you. Ladies, go ahead and give your solutions.
I'll go ahead and go next. I'm going to say that I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what you said, Tabitha, because it hit home. Um, I recently have gotten all new doctors. Well, a lot of new doctors. The ones that you were listing off, I'm like, yeah, I got a new one of those. I got a new one of those. I got a new one of those. So because I want her to have the best care. So she's on the autism spectrum. She can advocate for herself, but it's harder, and she needs the absolute best care because she has health issues. So making sure that you are getting checked if you are not feeling quite right, making sure that you are talking to a trusted adult or somebody that can help you if you are not feeling the best. Um, and making sure that you are discussing your feelings with others and your thoughts. So, and making sure as parents that it's not like a one stop like talk like, oh, how are you feeling, like all of a sudden out of the blue. We need to be able to normalize these conversations. So we're talking to our children, we're mentioning how we're feeling, so that way this is doesn't have to be the talk, like the suicide talk. It shouldn't be a suicide talk. It should be, you know, I'm not feeling so great today. Oh, how are you doing? And then that way we can kind of chart, is this getting like way out of hand? Is this something that's typical or atypical for my child? But if we're not talking to them and they're going on the video games and we're not having those dialogues, we don't really know how our children are doing.
Yeah, that's very good.
I want to address parents or anybody who interacts with children on a consistent basis for this. First and foremost, check in with yourself. Ask yourself, how do I process my emotions? How do I communicate my emotions? Or how do I think I communicate my emotions? And then ask a trusted person in your life, How do I communicate these things when I'm feeling them? Ask your significant other, ask a sibling, ask a very close friend, ask somebody who can give you a little bit of insight into you that maybe you're not necessarily mindful of. And I think that's more than okay. My husband knows me better than I know myself, and he called me out real hard earlier this week, and I was just like, "Damn!" But it was good. It was good for me to hear, because it was good for me to hear. Hey, Christina, when you're stressed, do you show up in stages? And then he listed my stages, and I went, "Wow, no one's put it so poignantly for me before." But thank you, and it was really good for me to hear that and hear from somebody that I love, care about, and trust, keyword trust, how they experience me when I'm in this. Check in with yourselves. And when you have dialogue with your kids, piggybacking off of what Christine just said, it needs to be a continuous dialogue and conversation. Don't just ask them, hey, how was school today? Fine. Oh, great. No, let's ask them really specific questions. What happens today? What emotions did you feel today? What was difficult about your day today? What was really great about your day today? If you didn't have something great about your day, let's talk about the stuff that wasn't so great and why it wasn't so great. What solutions were you able to come up with on your own today? And what solutions would you like from me as your parent, guardian, guidance counselor, teacher, grandparent, aunt, uncle, favorite neighbor? It doesn't matter. It takes a village to raise kids, right? There's a reason for that expression. So let's actually be that village. If a kid looks around and doesn't see village, that's when they make all these assumptions about themselves and go into those dark places alone, and they don't need to.
That's just true. Mm-hmm. So I made sure to put up that what I believe: home is parent and teacher number one. School is parent number two and teacher number two. The community is teacher number three and a bonus parent. All of those together equal a healthy child any day of the week. They have many people in a community that's out looking for them. And you're absolutely correct. I like the fact that we had definite solutions. I want to advocate for them bringing back the SEL, because that's where a lot of the mental health support is going to come from. So educators, if you're out there and you have gotten rid of SEL on your curriculum, I recommend that you actually kind of poll your parents and see how that's going for them, because that means that, honestly, we should have, Christina, we're going to have you come back, because even though we're talking about mental health here, there's another subset that we don't talk about, which is school shootings, and it's directly related back into the mental health. Sure. Nothing gets solved in dark places. Okay. Right. So we have to have the conversation, because the longer we wait to have the conversation, the more gun violence continues and the more children die unnecessarily when it's preventable. So all of these things, there's so much that feeds into it, but a lot of it is that we together have to do this together. The value systems have to exist at home as they do at school, and together that communication needs to continue, because at school they're mandatory reporters. Mm-hmm. And that means that if they do not report any type of abuse, regardless of what it is, they can lose their license, and they can go to jail. And there's a plethora of things that happens to these teens who do not report. But at the same time, they're only reporting for the safety of the child, because that is the most important person in the equation at the time. So I just want to say, hey, everybody, for coming to join us. Ali, Sia, Kevin, thank you, Kristen. Oh, jeez.
Almost made it through.
Almost made it. The value, that's right, Kristen. The value systems is so much. If it's not in alignment, you will find that people don't value life the same. And we really do need to be mindful of that. But our children are suffering. So as we go ahead and get ready to wrap up here, what I will say is that I was listening to Dr. Phil. And now I'm not there to listen to Dr. Phil, because he's a little funny sometimes. But he made a comment that let me know that, yes, the adults, all of us, contribute and participate in this nonsense. When they shut down the schools for the pandemic, yes, there was definitely a reason to do that. but shutting off the services that the children were receiving while going to school was not the right thing to do. So you could have maintained the services and shut down the school in order to support the students, because during that 2-year period, everything got worse. So the social media was actually, there's a lot more churn on social media, and kids are comparing themselves to others in a way that had them stop living life. And that has helped to increase the suicide rate and the depression and anxiety. But the adults, as we were doing this and we were learning on the fly, we actually sacrificed one of the most vital treasures that we had, and that was our children. And we have to reverse that or figure out how to do that. So taking out SEL now is actually the wrong thing to do, because now is a time in which you really need to tap into them to help them deal with these feelings that we have been feeling all this time, and now they're feeling it, and now they don't want to attend school because of the fact that we haven't met them to say we have a way through it. So ladies, what's the last things you want to say? Final comments?
Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not real.
Yeah.
When it comes to mental health, we can see a kid or a person in a wheelchair. We can't see somebody struggling with depression, but that doesn't mean that it's any less debilitating and difficult.
That's true. Very good point. You, Christine?
Honestly, I think I've already said kind of like my wrap up. So I just wanted to say it's been a pleasure talking with both of you today and tackling this hard subject. And I think we handled it, hopefully with being tactful and graceful in how we presented it, as well as thinking about people about all types of people and their situations.
You know what? I think that we don't. Yeah, I feel like, yep. I think we're doing all the right things, because at least we're talking about it. And although, I get a little animated, and that's important, because I need you to understand how important it is to others, period. And if I just sit and just say nicely how everything is supposed to change, nobody reacts to that. No one, not one soul. Even the flies will come in on you. And even though you say, get away, if you say, get away, it doesn't work. So this has been a great conversation. Christina, I'm going to ask for you to come back, because you feel safe to me to have the conversation about school shootings, mental health and school shootings. The contradiction is right there, because school shooters have mental health challenges. Every single one of them has you all see it. It unravels. And it's actually time for us to have a conversation about that. So I thank everybody for attending. I'm so excited that you were able to join. And this is your field, my friend. But woo, that's a lot.
I'm so happy to be here, have these conversations. And thank you so much for having me on again.
Awesome. So Kristen, forget it. Hey, I'm just going to call you something different. I just figure I'm just going to call you Lynn. I'm just going to go to your middle name. No, that's going to mess up me too, because both of you last names are Lynn. I can't deal with this any longer. This has been great. This has been a great conversation. Please catch us on the replay and like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, remember, words are power. Please remember to use them wisely. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate the support and look forward to you visiting us again next week. Same time, same place. Until then, words are power. Please remember to use them wisely. If you have an interest in discussing a contradiction or would like to be on our live show, please let us know and send us a direct message.